Good morning, it's Lance here once again. Best day of mountain biking and best time of year, Crankworx as always. And I'm going to do a few demos, and we're going to do the tricks of e-bikes, of course. And Bosch are kindly demoing their bikes with the new Bosch motor. So we're going to try the Scott Genius first. So I'll explain a bit more about the bike as we go. But anyway, come join me.
Okay, so as I said, this is the Scott Genius E-Ride 930. It's set up as a 29er, but I believe it can also be run as a 27.5 with the same frame. It's 150 mils travel front and rear with a RockShox 35 gold RL fork at the front and an X-Fusion rear shock at the back, and both have remote lockout, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more in a bit. 625 watt hour battery I believe in this model, and it's running the new generation 4 Bosch motor. This bike I believe sits at about 23 kgs, which is fairly typical for a lot of these bikes. I think this is an alloy version. I think some carbon bikes you can get a little bit lighter, but 23 is not an unusual weight for an aluminium frame. The geometry: head angle 65, reach 460, and a seat angle of 74.8 degrees, so fairly modern geometry, and I must admit I sort of felt quite at home on it when I got on it straight away. If you know my riding, I must admit a big fan of 29ers, and certainly like them a little bit longer these days. And yeah, so this thing, when I jumped on it, felt the right fit, and it was a large, this one, so I generally these days are pretty much on a large. Now if you have a bit of a listen there, you can hear the motor. It's not super quiet. I've certainly had quieter motors in this one, but not unacceptable to me.
Off you guys go.
Okay, so we all know that e-bikes can climb pretty well, so the question usually is what is it like downhill? So here's the first downhill run. Quite a bit of traffic as it's pretty busy with Crankworx on.
Just stopped a little bit to let the traffic go. Lots of slow riders down. You want to get a decent run down, so we'll give them a little bit of a break to catch up. Climbing so far, yeah, pretty good. Feels pretty good. Like the geometry, yeah, all good.
I can't believe, as I'm making this video, New Zealand's preparing to shut down due to coronavirus. Last weekend the Riverhead Enduro was cancelled, and 2 weeks before that we were down here at Crankworx, huge crowds at these events. It's amazing how things can change so quick. But anyway, back to the bike. You may notice there's quite a rattle going on. I can certainly hear it on the GoPro watching this footage back. Not quite sure what that is, but certainly it's quite annoying to listen to. The motor doesn't bother me, but the battery shake does. But anyway, there's probably something that could be resolved. Overall, the bike wasn't set up for me, but I was pretty happy with the suspension performance from the RockShox 35s and the X-Fusion rear shock. They do have both have lockout, although I didn't even try using that. The brakes, got Shimano 4-piston brakes. They were pretty good. The setup on the handlebars wasn't great, but they certainly did seem to slow up the bike on this steep stuff coming down here. Alright, heading up for a second lap. I think pretty much, as I say, all e-bikes I've ever ridden seem to climb pretty well.
Now you guys know that I'm not one to complain, but this has got to be one of the worst setups of the bars I've had. Your dropper post is actually a shock lockout, so that's confusing me no end. The dropper post is unreachable from the right hand side, so you can't even use it while holding the grip. The brakes are too far over to the right and the shifter's too far to the left, so anyway, that could all be corrected. So yeah, I wouldn't let it put you off the bike, but yeah, the setup's pretty bad. Good to roll?
Yeah mate, on the gas though.
On the gas, we're on the gas.
So I guess the question you're thinking is, Lance, would you buy this bike? I think it's a pretty good bike actually. Nice geometry, jumps okay, travels down the hill pretty well, climbs pretty good, got a good reliable motor in it. but I think the answer would probably be no on this bike. The lockout on the shock and fork seems to be a bit of a Scott thing. Some people like it. I really don't believe it's necessary on an e-bike, and having the seat post dropper on an awkward little lever on the right hand side was quite annoying for me, so that would be a reason I would think to not take it. I actually demoed at the same time. There'll be another video of the Trek rail, and if I was going to choose between the two bikes, which I imagine are very similarly priced, I would probably take the Trek. But it's a personal thing, not a bad bike, and I guess if you had a Scott dealership right near you and it was going for a good price, I would certainly be more than happy to ride one. So yeah, it's a pretty cool bike, but you know, I don't know that I would actually take it as first choice.
Well guys, that was the Scott Genius e-bike review. There's some things I liked about it, things I didn't like about it. I hope you liked the review, and if you did, click on the old subscribe button, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.